So, Australia has issued the first piece of legislation of its kind, which is a ban on social media for kids under the age of 16. Now, some say that this is long overdue as we need to protect kids' mental health and perhaps give parents legal backing as they try to protect their kids from the dangers of internet use. But others seem to feel that this is just another government overreach and that the motives really aren't about the kids. Let's get into it. Welcome to my channel, Outspoken Samantha. I appreciate you being here, whether this is the first time you have clicked on one of my videos or you are a returning supporter. Please hit the thumbs up button, make sure that you're subscribed, and make sure that your notifications are turned on so that you never miss out on a conversation like the one we're about to have. So I think it's no secret that social media use has turned into something that has become an unavoidable part of our existence. For me, it's something that has been wild to watch evolve, having not grown up with it, and being able to witness firsthand how it crept into the world, how it started, how it changed, and now how it's become something that is so ingrained in our lives that it seems to be impossible to function without it. I don't just mean the mindless scrolling that we do on social media for absolutely no reason, but it's become a huge part of business, a part of education. It's how we get the news, and it seems to be the primary source of how most of us socialize. And as today's kids have become the first generation to grow up in a world where constant social media use is 100% normal, it seems like online connections are replacing in-person socializing altogether, which may be at least one contributing factor to what has become a mental health crisis in today's youth. In this interview on the GBN network, Arabella Skinner tells us just how out of control social media use for kids has gotten.
To seeing these figures jump, but we're not used to seeing it jump quite that much. But it's also worth noting there was recently a big piece of work by Parental who go out and talk to thousands and thousands of parents. And when you're looking at younger children, you're talking about 14% of children are spending 7 hours a day after school on the phones. And the average is 3 hours 20, and that's out of school time. So this is something that's affecting everyone, and it's a serious issue, particularly as children seem to know that this is a problem.
After years of watching social media expand from something that used to be used primarily to connect with people that you actually knew in person, especially if you didn't see them very often, to something that's become normal for everyone of all ages to participate in and to have multiple accounts on multiple apps that we now go to for everything, the question has become, how do we dial it back, and how do we gain a more balanced approach to the use of social media, especially where kids are concerned? Well, Australia seems to think that they have the answer. Recently, a bill was passed that would ban kids under the age of 16 entirely from using social media. Here's the story. Australia just passed the world's toughest social media ban, blocking kids 16 and under from surfing platforms like Facebook, TikTok, and Snapchat, and threatening to punish the companies if they don't comply. The world first law, which both chambers of the Australian government approved this week by wide margins, will make the platforms liable for fines of up to $33 million if they fail to stop kids from creating accounts. The companies have a year to figure out how to implement the ban. Quote, the basis for this is that there is a feeling amongst the majority of Australians that social media does more harm than good. Rob Nichols, a senior research associate in the Department of Media and Communication at the University of Sydney, told NBC News. Amendments tacked onto the bill bolster privacy protections, making it illegal for the companies to force users to hand over government-issued identity documents such as driver's licenses or digital IDs through a government system. Still, supporters say the ban will help preserve kids' fragile mental health, which study after study has shown is hurt by social media. Extensive use can lead to body image issues among young girls, for example, and the misogynistic content posted online has damaged impressionable young boys, advocates say. So the question is this really the answer? South Australia's Premier Peter Malinauskas seems to think this is not only the answer, but that parents in other countries are envious of what Australia is doing.
Just about giving parents the tools that they need to make sure they graduate kids into online spaces in an appropriate way that reflects their own maturity. But I think it's been welcomed by parents around the country. I think other parents around the world are envious of what Australia has done. And I mean, ultimately what we're talking about here, of course, is protecting our kids.
Surveys from The Sun and Telegraph in the UK reveal more than 65% of voters are in favour of similar measures being implemented there. A Swiss survey also found 78% of respondents would get behind social media age restrictions. The new laws passed our parliament yesterday but won't be implemented for another year.
So you guys tell me, are you envious of what Australia is doing, or are there other things that we should be concerned about? Because I don't know about you guys, but when the government says it's doing something for our good and for our well-being, it usually ends up being something that they use against us. I think COVID mandates and restrictions taught us that more than anything else. There's no doubt that there's so much danger online, and we do need to monitor very heavily what our kids have access to. Bullies are given round-the-clock access to their victims. Predators can lure kids in and influence them to do things that could have tragic consequences. Mom's story in particular is being used as a primary example of why social media bans for minors sound almost necessary. Back to this article, it says most Australians agree with the ban according to a YouGov poll released Tuesday that found 77% support among the citizenry, as do several parents of kids who were victimized online, such as Sonia Ryan, whose 15-year-old daughter Carly was murdered by a 50-year-old pedophile who pretended to be a teenager online. Quote, "It's too late for my daughter Carly and the many other children who have suffered terribly and those who have lost their lives in Australia. But let us stand together on their behalf and embrace this together," she said. Ryan also called the Senate vote a monumental moment in protecting our children from horrendous harms online. And it goes without saying that that is absolutely heartbreaking. It's literally every parent's worst nightmare. Of course, the dangers are not only limited to these types of situations. TikTok challenges have influenced kids to do things that are dangerous and have life-altering or life-ending consequences. From the Tide Pod challenge to dumping huge buckets of ice on your head, to the milk crate challenge, to content that inspires young girls to emaciate themselves with weight loss challenges. Things that kids are being exposed to online is far-reaching and immeasurable. It's putting the most powerful tool in the hands of someone whose brain isn't fully developed and hoping for the best. Again, is a ban the answer? Is this really about protecting kids, or is there something else going on here? Well, some have noticed, coincidentally, that this bill was passed just after the 2024 US election, and many in Australia have said it was rushed and didn't face enough debate or evaluation before being passed. So we have to wonder, what was the hurry? As you guys may have noticed, a phrase that has been spreading like wildfire on X over the last few days are the words, "We are the media." And that has sent the mainstream media into an absolute tailspin because they know that they have lost all credibility and that we are turning back to each other to discuss the issues that matter. And most people are not turning to them anymore to hear what's going on in the world. So some are speculating about this ban being targeted specifically at young users, you know, the ones who spend 8 hours a day in a public school being indoctrinated by a liberal college grad. And as the people in Australia's government are defending this bill as a means of protecting kids from access to misinformation, the real agenda seems to be that they want kids to get all of their information from their government-run classroom and not be able to access any other perspective online. This interview from Spectator TV seemed to support that point.
We have, you go through one point after another, starting with the social media ban for under 16s, is just a deliberate poke in the eye to Twitter, easily Twitter, providing the most reliable, factual, diverse source of news and content of any media platform in the world, easily the biggest, most watched. And we say, and you've got Elon Musk coming in as the head with Vivek Ramaswamy, the head of the new Department of Government Efficiency, regarded as Donald Trump's most trusted confidant at the moment. So the first thing Australia does is ban access to Elon Musk for kids under 16. Genius, Albo. Genius, mate. You're on the ball, brother. You just don't miss a trick.
I don't mean to start conspiracy theories, but this seems feasible to me, especially considering the timing. I mean, of course, I do think on some level they are trying to address a very real crisis in the mental health of youth. However, in my opinion, it looks like they're using the crisis pertaining to kids to push their own agenda items, which is something that the government has become known for doing, and our kids tend to be their favorite pawns. And then it is fair to ask, what other agenda items could they push forward under the guise of protecting the kids? Their concern that a lot of Australians have raised is about their government gaining another step toward digital ID, which is something that they introduced a while ago, promising it was an entirely voluntary system, and insisting that this is a way to make life easier for people by giving them a way to have access to any of their important documents at any time.
Made very clear across government but we have been very clear. It is a voluntary system, it is a safe system, it is a secure system, and it's simply a means of verifying yourself in a way that gives you control of your own documentation.
Yet for some reason, people aren't convinced that this will be voluntary, and they're not convinced that this is really meant for their benefit. In this article, it says, introducing a comprehensive digital ID system brings significant surveillance and privacy concerns. Research helps us to explain why. In one study, published by the Public Administration Review, which examines public acceptance of digital surveillance technologies across 9 European countries, it is emphasized that citizen support for these technologies depends not only on how their data is used, but also on the perceived trustworthiness of the security agencies operating them. The study concludes that the perceived benevolence, competence, and integrity of these agencies are crucial for public acceptance, especially for more intrusive surveillance technologies. These findings underscore the importance of trust, ethical deployment, and transparency in implementing any digital surveillance system, including the proposed digital ID system in Australia. Evidently, leaders must ensure that the digital ID system is designed and operated in ways that prioritize the privacy and rights of individuals. This is particularly critical for workplace leaders who must navigate the increased surveillance capabilities and ensure that employees' privacy is respected. And that all sounds good. It seems like they're aware of people's concerns about privacy. I also find it funny when they say, we know that you're concerned about trust and how this information will be used, as if acknowledging that you're aware of our hesitancy in trusting the government agencies with immediate access to our identifying information is supposed to give us the impression that you would never violate that trust. We all know better, which is why in general, people have stopped buying what the government is selling. And it seems like people's concerns with the real motivations behind this social media ban are correct, as it looks like the digital ID agenda is being linked to it.
If you're testing to see if someone's 13 or 14 or 15 or 16, you're also testing to see, by definition, if they're 16 plus. So that if there's going to be age verification, everybody is going to have to go through an age verification process, won't they?
Yes.
Yes.
So this isn't just about the privacy or collecting data about kids. This is literally everybody accessing social media. That's how it has to work, isn't it?
Yes.
Senator Shoebridge, you just used the term age verification. You may not have been in the room when we had a discussion about the distinction between age verification and age assurance. This is an age assurance trial.
This is, if you're going to have age assurance for kids 13, 14, 15 or 16, testing if they're that age, you're testing everyone's age and you're doing it at that level of age assurance. And that has privacy and data protection implications for literally everybody accessing social media, doesn't it?
Yes, and that's one of the reasons why.
And another Twitter user posted about the same issue. She says it won't just be kids under 16 who have restricted access to social media in Australia next year. A national classification program for adults will be introduced for all online users, along with a restricted access scheme, which includes a control system requiring digital ID just to access a website. So it looks like there is a whole slew of other problems that this bill could open doors to. And it really makes it look, again, like they're using one crisis to their benefit to push other agenda items and expand government control in general. Listen, we all understand that social media has had immeasurable negative effects on young kids. And I personally believe that kids should not have their own social media accounts until they're 18 years old. Internet interaction with other people is no substitute for in-person connections. And I think the loss of that connection has had devastating effects on today's youth. However, in my opinion, expecting the government to step in and ban our kids from these platforms as a solution to the problems of kids overusing these apps seems to me like one more way that parents expect the government to do the job that they should be doing themselves. It just sounds to me like too many parents are afraid of saying no, and anytime they can pass the buck off to someone else as the reason for enforcing a rule, then they can escape the problem of having to be the bad guy to their own kid. The fact that at this point we have years of information indicating that social media use has created real problems for kids, that should be the incentive as a parent to step in and protect your kid from it. That's literally literally our job. And I'm also not saying that it's any parent's fault when something bad happens and that their child gets pulled into something egregious and the outcomes are tragic, because I understand that even when we're doing the best we can and enforcing the rules in our home, our kids can still go behind our backs and put themselves in harmful situations. But I have seen the power of what happens when we choose to normalize something and how quickly it can become the acceptable standard. And while there have been countless things like drag queen story hours and naked pride parades for kids that have been normalized, this is one circumstance where working to normalize something would be a benefit to our children. And that thing is no social media accounts for minors. Because when the government steps in at this level where so much of our personal information is required to enforce it, it will come with its own set of consequences. So I think it's up to us to mitigate it as much as possible before looking to the government to make the rules for us. Once they have that power, it's almost impossible to pry it out of their hands. The other aspect to this is that it seems like this is another example of government punishing law-abiding citizens instead of going after those who are actually creating the problem. If you can impose bans for 16-year-olds, then you have the power to ban predators. If you can monitor the activity of minors, then you can monitor the activity of people posting illegal material. If you can impose consequences on people violating age restrictions, then you can impose consequences on people who are conducting themselves in a lewd and grotesque way online. The laws need to be targeted at those who are going after minors, who post disgusting pictures and videos, and to those who are bullying and harassing others. And I'm so glad that there are policies in place to crack down on that type of activity. Mind you, it seems like expressing a conservative opinion online carries harsher consequences than being a child predator. If we're talking about an increase in restrictions, it makes more sense to me to put that time and energy into figuring out how to find the people that are at the root of the problem than to restrict people who haven't done anything wrong. While I think there are arguments to be made in favor of something like this, where we are restricting the use of social media for minors, I think there are also a lot of unintended consequences that could come from supporting this level of government intervention. But I would love to hear your thoughts on this in the comments below. Do you think that this is the answer, or do you think that this is going too far? Please be sure to hit that thumbs up button. Make sure that you are subscribed. Keep it real, guys, and I will see you in the next one.